Robbie, thank you so much for coming by. This is an honor to have your presence here, man. As a singer, you have done so much and continue to do so much. And I remember hearing your name from Russ Miller, who had played the Yamaha Groove Night that you were there with the Marauders. I mean, this is amazing how, name gets out in our little business of what it is. Guys, we're blown away by what you did. Jules Follett, who runs this entire organization, she was blown away by what you did. Thank you so much. Tell me where this started for you. Where did it start for you getting involved with this business and being a vocalist?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Hey. And it's great to be here. What started for me, growing up, I grew up in northern Michigan in a small town called Traverse City, Michigan. And I always knew from a very young age that singing came pretty natural for me. And as I, got into school, in the early years through grade school, my mother really encouraged me to get into choir. So I got into choir. It was called Glee Club at the time. And,
Glee Club, absolutely.
And, I looked forward to it all the time. And I remember one day the teacher pulled my mother inside and said, pulled her aside and said, your son's got some really real talent here. You better, make sure he pursues it. So basically, I stayed in choir all through school until I graduated, and choir was one of my favorite classes, of course, and I still to this day love choral music and classical music. And so after that, after I graduated high school, while I was in probably my sophomore year of high school, I started playing in rock bands. My brother got me involved through a friend of his, and I started doing the Southern rock band, and from there I just went from one band to another, and in my little small town, I was I was in this other band, and I was always the youngest guy in the band. The other guys had maybe 5 to 10 years on me. And I remember one of the bands I was in, there were 2 guitar players, extremely talented guitar players, and they were working at a factory, it was the cherry capital of the world, so there was a pie factory they worked at, and they were extremely talented.
Yeah.
And but they could tell that they were really miserable with their job, and they just wanted to play music, but they didn't have the guts, I would say, to pursue it and get out of that town, and get out of there and really pursue your career. And they were kind of happy, and that's cool for them. But to me, I remember looking at them, and I just thought, you know what? When I'm their age, there's no way I'm going to be stuck in this town.
Good for you.
And because I knew I had to get serious about my career. So shortly after I graduated high school, a lot of things happened. I was working at a shoe store that I, was really tired of. I broke up with my girlfriend. My mother had passed away. A lot of other things had happened, and the timing was right. And my brother had moved to Los Angeles, and I'd visited him a couple times. And after I came back, I knew that was the place I needed to be, and I had to get serious about it. And it was a huge step for me, to pack up and leave.
What year was that about?
That was 1986. I was 21 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, and you got your friends, your family, and you got to say goodbye to everybody. So what I did, I made the decision. I quit my job, and I sold everything I possibly could in my apartment. The rest I threw in the trash, packed up my car, put a rooftop carrier on it, and I had a friend drive out with me. He said, "I'll go to Los Angeles with you." So we drove out, and I remember the day when I told my friends that I was going to pursue my music career, my singing career in Los Angeles. They all thought I was nuts. They're like, "Dude, you're crazy, California's gonna fall off into the ocean." I heard so many negative stories. And they're like, "Oh, you're never gonna make it, you don't do it, you'll never be able to get back." All the negative stuff, and I didn't listen to them, because there are a lot of naysayers,
But you didn't listen to them because you felt that driven to make this happen.
I knew in my gut that that's what I needed to do.
That's an interesting point. That's really instinct speaking.
Big time.
And a lot of people are afraid to listen to instinctual feelings because of exactly what you said, the fear of failing and people telling them that you can't do it.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. It's funny. Dave Wyckkoff spoke about this too, about the fact that the music school program really helped him to understand music and get involved and whet his appetite for music as a profession. The middle school or junior high school and high school school program, which now in this country it's being depleted.
I know.
So without that influence, we're going down some dangerous path by not allowing that program to fuel artists. I mean, even the great Chad Smith from the Red Hot Chili Peppers was another one that said his school music program kept him in music in what he did. So that was a part of it. So now, so you felt this calling. You're out here now. You hit LA. What happened?
Well, when I came to LA, I lived with my brother for about a year, and then I had a friend who was out playing bass, and it was so here we are, late '80s, early '90s. It was the glam rock, spandex
absolutely.
and Aquanet hairspray and all that, right? So my friend was playing bass in this band. He was playing the Strip when, you know, because ours was there, Roxy, Whiskey, all those clubs at Troubadours, and they needed a roadie. So I thought, okay, you know, I'll be your bass roadie. So I was just, humping his gear around and unpacking it gig to gig. And then eventually, you know, I got to the point I'd set up the singer's mic and I'd be like, I remember, you know the country club in Reseda?
Absolutely, sure.
Anyways,
sure.
that was one of my first places I played. And I went there and I remember checking the mic. I was like checking. I was like, oh, this is great. And so, long story short, the singer for that band eventually quit the band, and then I filled in there, and that was my very first band.
How did you fill in? Did they know you were a singer?
Yeah, they did through my friend Mike, who was playing bass in the band. He
said, Robbie can do it. He can make
so
it
I
happen.
sang, I sang some of the songs, and they were like, oh, great, yeah. You're in. So that band, we worked on the Strip for a while, and then that band led to other bands, and my whole point to moving to LA, which is another thing, which is kind of silly when you think about it. When I left LA, I thought to myself, well, I'll give myself 5 years. If it doesn't happen in 5 years, forget about it. That's what I'm thinking in the back of my head. Yeah, right. Here I am 30 years later, right? So
fantastic.
Yeah, so after that, and the point to moving to LA was like, okay, join an original band, write the music, and go for the big record deal, which a lot of bands are doing. And at the time, Motley Crue and Poison and Warrant and all these bands were starting to happen.
Right.
And I remember we were doing really good with our band, and we're getting a lot of industry people down, selling out, packing the place, closing the doors. The fire department would come and say no more people. But we got close. We never got the record deal. So I thought eventually, all I want to do is make a living at singing. So what I did is I just kind of stopped doing the original thing, and I started getting in cover bands. And I tell you what, in cover bands, I met more people and made more connections. You've got to learn a lot of songs. You've got to know material. Yeah,
cover bands.
Yeah, a lot of material, which exposed me to so many different styles and made me much more, well-rounded singer, because I had to learn, which is later as well. But that's what
all the musicians that you met too. So here you're not meeting all these different musicians.
Well, yeah. I mean, I ended up playing with, I started playing at this club in Sherman Oaks, and next thing I look around, there's Rick Murata on the drums, Neil Steubenhouse on bass. I'm like, these are the guys I grew up listening to on their records, and it's like, how crazy is this? And then that led to, well, actually, let me back up. Before I met Rick and Neil in that band, I was in a band with Keith Emerson, the late Keith Emerson, who was amazing. Yeah. Louis Johnson from the Brothers Johnson.
Oh, amazing.
And it was just, it's very surreal. So you just never know who you're going to meet by putting yourself out there. So
and those bands, when you were working with Keith and those guys, what kind of music were you doing? What were you doing with the?
We were doing ELP songs.
Interesting.
Yeah. I sang like Touch and Go and a few of the other songs.
Yeah.
And of course they did a lot of instrumentals, and we played a few gigs. It did, it was short-lived. We were only together a little over a year.
Yeah.
And.
But what experience to be able to.
Oh, great. Great experience.
So was LA the place at that time to, for you to be here, to meet the players and to continue on meeting more music? You just kept on networking.
Yes, absolutely. I just kept networking and, putting myself out there all the time. And I always pretty much say, to this day, I'll pretty much say yes to anything, because I always think that, I don't know, you never know who you're going to meet when you go to the next session, you go to the next gig.
Yeah.
And sure enough, then that's the network. You go, you do a good job, you deliver more than they're expecting, you go and you just kill it. You go to the session or the gig, and next thing you know, they're referring you left and right, and they're going to call you back. And all my work is just, it's all referral.
But that's amazing that you say that, because the concept of being able to deliver more than they expect, that's a real powerful line.
Yeah, it is.
For people to understand and listen to. Any listeners here, when they hear that, they got to understand what that means. That means you went there and you gave way more than you knew that they were expecting, and you were really prepared way over probably what that gig required.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Do your homework above and beyond, and I still do that to this day, and really do my homework and know the material. You don't want to show up and and kind of fake it, because they're not going to refer you at all.
And that then, if you show up and fake it, that becomes your reputation.
Yeah, exactly.
That you showed up and faked it.
Exactly right. Yep.
So what you did was you did just the opposite. You showed up prepared. How do you prepare for certain songs and certain bands?
Well, for me, I just, of course, just listened to the material over and over. And back before the internet, I was always typing out the lyrics, listening to it, typing it out. But now I can, off the internet, copy the lyrics over. And I sit down and I go line by line and I make my little notes, like where I'm taking a breath or certain phrasing on certain lines. So I'll go through the lyric sheet and kind of make my notes on that lyric sheet. And then I'll just go over and over until I've got it down. And then if it's a memorized gig, well, I'll do that till I've got it memorized as well.
Interesting.
Of course, mostly because you have to memorize the material.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but I did a lot of casual gigs where you could read, but
the casual gigs you still met many musicians that were good musicians there.
That was another one, yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're going, you show up at the bandstand. There's guys that have been on tour with.
Some of the top acts.
Horn players from Prince's band, or the keyboard player. Just they've all worked with name guys. They're all basically off tour, so on their spare time they'll pick up these gigs. So I go to these gigs. They're called casual corporate gigs where you're doing weddings. You're doing corporate gigs, but you go there and it's like, and you've got all these songs you have to learn. And for me, I started out doing like commercial hard rock when I was in Michigan, and I came out and I was doing the same thing when I was in my original band. But when I got into do the cover bands and the casual gigs more specifically, that really broadened my...
That widened a big... Yeah.
Especially because I was doing... I've always loved R&B and soul, but that really put me in the R&B and soul category. And Stevie Wonder was one of my very first influences. I have songs in the key of life when I was little.
How powerful.
So, so I did a lot of R&B, but the other thing was, okay, now you got to do country. So I would do country, and I'm capture the twang, and I'm really good at mimicking, so I can mimic the artist, my favorite artist, but yet still add my own vibe.
Yeah.
And then it was like, okay, now here's a bunch of Sinatra songs, you got to learn, and the big band swing stuff. And I was just like, and at first I thought, that's really not my thing, Sinatra, yeah, whatever. Then I got into listening to Frank Sinatra, and I did the same thing, studying the material, got the lyrics out, listened to his phrasing.
Interesting.
And I went, this guy is ridiculous. And I became an instant fan of Frank Sinatra right away, just by the way he phrases and the way he sings and the way his delivery is.
Absolutely.
I learned so much. And now doing jazz standard tunes is one of my favorite gigs to do.
But think about it. Here's a young guy like yourself doing the research of Sinatra. This is exactly the message that the next generation has to hear. That here you are doing this kind of research. And just so you know, the next person that I'll be interviewing is Tony Opedisana. We call him Tony O, who happened to be Sinatra's manager for the last 20 years of his life.
Oh, wow.
So before you leave, I want to make sure you meet Tony.
I'd love to meet him.
A dear old friend of mine.
Yeah.
And he spoke about how Sinatra would take a song and really study it and find out where he wanted to phrase it, where he wanted to breathe, how he wanted the message of the lyric of the song to hit deeper into the song. It was a well-studied work of art. Wow. That when he went there, he knew the tune inside and out. And Sinatra was a 1 or 2 take guy.
That's right.
That's it.
That's right.
2 takes, he left and walked out. So
live.
Literally live. So it was a different preparation, but you have that desire to do that, which is really great to hear.
Yes.
That's really great to hear.
Which all does stem back to the high school programs, because it wasn't, I meant to say this earlier, if it wasn't for me being in choir and coming up singing in choir and studying music in school, I've really got to say that because of that, it drove me.